Hi, this is Abby Sasser coming to you live from the One Campaign. We are at Davos for the World Economic Forum in Switzerland, and we are here at the SDG Live studio. Follow the conversation at hashtag SDG Live. And I'm here today with Coen van Oostrom, the CEO from OVG Real Estate, as well as Jonathan Reckford, the CEO from Habitat for Humanity. So thank you for joining us today.
Great. Thanks for having us.
So tell us a little bit about why you're in Davos.
You want to start?
Sure. So we're here in support, obviously, of our core mission, which is the belief that everyone deserves a decent place to live, and that housing, as one of the SDG goals, is interrelated to health, to education, to livelihoods, to the things we collectively are here for. So we love the fact that in Davos, you've got multi-sector opportunities to bring together the public sector, private sector, civil society, because to tackle these complex issues, it has to be a multi-sector approach.
Absolutely.
And for us, I think one of the main topics this year in Davos is smart cities. And my company is well known for making smart buildings. And now we're trying to work together with municipalities, with governments, with all kinds of stakeholders, and seeing how we can bring the latest generation of technology together in buildings, but also connect buildings and with that make smarter cities.
Great. So Coen, tell me a little bit more about that. How do smart cities help us achieve the SDGs?
Well, what you've seen is that the Internet of Things is coming to buildings as well. I would say that it started with all kinds of other things, but now the real estate industry is picking up as well. And suddenly we have the amazing opportunity that we have a lot of data coming out of buildings, and with that coming out of cities. We actually know where people are going when they step into a car in the morning and when they drive to their office. Sure. So what we need now, the next level, is that we have smart analytics, that we have smart people working in municipalities that are going to use that data and use that data to redesign the cities and redesign the way people get to work, how people go and have lunch, and all these other things that we do in our daily lives in cities. And we think we can make a lot better cities with all this data included in the choices that we have to make.
Got it. And Jonathan, I think last year Habitat 3 came around, is that correct?
That's right.
Tell me a little bit about what you learned there and what some of the biggest challenges you're seeing with sustainable growth and prosperity in urban settings.
We were really excited to be a part of Habitat 3, which is, for those who don't know, the UN every 20 years brings all the countries of the world together to talk about the future of cities. And that happened in October in Quito, Ecuador. And Habitat for Humanity had the chance to co-author the housing policy with the Inter-American Development Bank. And what was really exciting was an integrated view of how do we implement the SDGs and make it real in our cities. And we launched out of that the new urban agenda. And the new urban agenda is really the practical implementation of the SDGs and the roadmap for the next 20 years for cities. And we think smart cities also mean not just technologically smart, but are cities where they work for all the citizens in the city. And a huge issue for us then is really zoning and land use. Cities have grown much faster than the plans have been there for them, and so we've got, therefore, huge informal settlements and slums, more than 1 billion people worldwide living in slums. So how do we upgrade the living conditions for people in those conditions, but then how do cities better plan for their future growth, because we know we're going to see explosive urbanization over the next 20 years as well.
Got it. And Coen, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunities here?
I think that the great opportunity right now is that we now can really make cities that are energy neutral, that actually produce as much energy as they are using themselves. And I think there's a huge step forward to be made in new cities, but also in retrofitting our existing cities and making sure that the energy use in those cities is much more economical. And if you do that, and if you do that in the right way, you can also use all kinds of new things that are coming up, like the circular economy, using materials that can be reused again, time and time again. And therefore we think that the future is going to be great. However, there's a lot of work to be done, because what Jonathan is telling us is absolutely true. There's so many people that want to live in cities at the moment, and if we make better cities, even the magnet of the city will become even bigger. And so a lot of work to be done, and therefore it's good to be here in Davos and to be able to speak to so many people that are working on these SDG goals.
That's great. And Jonathan, tell us a little bit about how people can learn more, get involved, if folks out here in the audience want to do that.
So if you look for the new urban agenda, you can actually see all the research. There are 10 sort of core research papers. We gathered the top of the 20 of the top global urbanists, and they laid out a set of policy recommendations. So those who want to go deep can go very deep. At the core is how do we build mixed income, mixed use cities that are properly designed so that people that are transit oriented, where people can live closer to where they work and close to transit hubs, so that we really enable livelihoods. And what we've seen is inequality gets reduced when people live in economically mixed. If we create segregated cities, we trap people in this cycle of poverty, and that actually turns out to be bad for everybody in the city. So how do we together create a better vision of cities that really work for all their citizens?
Can I add to that? One of the amazing things that I've learned this week is that there's so much competition between cities. For example, in the Western world, we have Paris and we have London now sort of battling over where the bankers might go. But the real interesting thing is maybe of the 100% of issues they have, on 1% they have competition, and on 99% they could work together, and they don't. And so one of the things we need to do is we have to bring these people together, not only the rich cities, but also the cities in emerging countries, making sure they work together and they solve all these issues, because every issue has been solved already, and we just have to share that information together.
Great. Tell me, is there a city that you can think of that's doing it really right, or an example that you can give us?
Right now, I would say that the Scandinavian cities are really high up, and maybe Jonathan, you have examples of.
Yeah. In a lower income city, an award-winning example is Medellin, Colombia, where they did some really creative work to link the informal settlements to the city using transit. And so by building out the infrastructure, they created an environment where suddenly people had access to livelihoods, and then they could improve their own shelter and housing. But it's a really wonderful example of a city that was known as one of the most dangerous places in the world, becoming one of the most livable places in the world, but in a way that was inclusive and linked together all those refugees who had settled in the hillsides. But a really nice example of creative urban planning.
Yeah. And another amazing example is a whole new city, the King Abdullah city in Saudi Arabia. And the interesting thing there is that these guys said, hey, we want to do it smart, we want to do a whole new city. They started all over again 5 times, because every time new technologies came up, and they suddenly found out, hey, if you have driverless cars, do you then still build the same roads as you would do in a traditional city? They're like, no, let's redesign it. But every time new technologies come up, and every time they have to start all over again. But we think that might be one of the great examples in the world.
That's great. And is there a website or anything people should go to learn more?
So certainly for us, if you're interested in the shelter and housing side, go to habitat.org, and we can link you to the housing policies and pieces. But also, if you can also go to WEF or to the New Urban Agenda and see the much broader array of policies.
And another amazing website is the futureofconstruction.org. It's a sort of a platform where a lot of information is getting together, and where a lot of people share things on the future cities.
That's great. Well, thank you both so much for being here. We appreciate your time. And again, be sure to follow us at #SDG Live.